My name is Trevor Christensen. I do social news video at the Salt Lake Tribune. This is a YouTube series about how I do that work at the Trib and how you can do this kind of work at your news outlet. My job at the Trib is often to be in front of the camera as well as help reporters feel comfortable reading their story on camera. So that's what this video is about. I'm going to go over the technical side, I'll show you what gear and app I use, and we'll also talk about how to write a script for video, as well as little tips and tricks I've learned along the way.
In 2020, there was markedly less traffic on state roads because of the COVID-19 pandemic.
So a big part of my job at the Trib is being on camera, reading a reporter's reporting, and translating that reporting from the page to a script that I can read. My scripting process is I will start reading it through and just copy pasting interesting lines or interesting facts in the story that I think should make it into the video. Once I feel like I have a good grasp on the story, I will start writing my version of the script. And I think this is going to bring in a natural question as well. If a reporter has already written a story, shouldn't you just read it out verbatim because they already did that work? Why would you replicate some of that work? And the answer is, for social video, we're usually talking about videos that are vertical and are somewhere between a minute and 3 minutes long. And a lot of stories that the Tribune produces are longer than that, and so we just don't have the time to do that. The other thing is that when you write in a news context, you are writing in a news style that works on the page, but is not meant to be read aloud. And so correct news writing for the page can actually feel very awkward when you're just reading the story verbatim. The biggest lesson I've learned as I've gone through this process a bunch of times in the last year and a half is that bad reading is bad writing. And what I mean by that is if you're having a hard time reading your script, if you keep stumbling over the same part over and over, it just means that you probably didn't write that sentence or that paragraph to actually be spoken aloud, because the way we express things aloud is just different than the way we write things. So a big part of what I do in the scripting phase is I go through a reporter's story and I just try to ask myself, how would I say this if I was trying to explain it to someone? How would I communicate these ideas? Because like, we have really great writers on staff, but they are writing for a written news context, and I need to translate to social media, which is just a different context.
I'm here at the Bonneville Salt Flats, and according to some scientists, it might not be around much longer.
Social media is a more casual medium. So generally on social media, people who see my work did not seek it out. They're being served it algorithmically, which means that I need to do a little bit more work to make it legible to as many people as possible. So often that means making the language simpler. Often that means adding more context. That means I'm rewriting these scripts a lot because the people who are reading them might not already have an understanding of, the Utah historical politics that they need to understand to really get the full weight of the story. It's up to me to make sure that I am translating these stories for as broad an audience as possible, because social media is such a broad audience. So the process is I read the story a couple times, I write my script, and then I bring it to the reporter or their editor and I say, hey, can you check this off? Can you make sure I understood it? I'm not missing anything valuable. They'll go in, they'll check it, they might add some stuff. And then, once that's checked off, it's time to actually do the worst part of it all. One of the most important things I've learned is that I'm just not going to nail it in one, and so I generally break out my scripts paragraph by paragraph, or maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs at a time, and then I'll repeat those in the script. So you'll see, if you ever look at one of my scripts as it's presenting on a teleprompter, you'll just see the same couple lines over and over and over again, and it's just because I kind of have to get familiar with the text. I'm not great at reading stuff, and so I need some practice. Additionally, if you ever watch me do this, I will read it and then I want a marker somewhere in the video so that once I know that I do have a good take, I can easily go through my entire 20-minute take and say, well, this was this good paragraph and that was that good paragraph. And so you'll see me like snap on camera or clap or something that I can, when I'm visually scrubbing through, I can see either a peak in a waveform, or I can see visually that I was doing something in front of my face. Trevor know that like this was a good take and we can move on. I think it's really vulnerable to be in front of a camera trying to do sort of a facsimile of a news reporter, telling you the story. And one of the things that I've learned is that you basically have to decide that you are going to be a character of yourself. You need to see yourself as more of a tool than a person at this moment. And right now you are just a tool that is trying to communicate a story to your viewer. And what that means for me is that I'll be a little bit more exaggerated, kind of smiling a little more, or using my arms a little more, or just something that can help punctuate the story. When I inhabit the sort of character of Trevor Christensen, the video guy at the Trib, it's a lot easier for me to do that, because unless you have like a performing theater background, which I do not, it feels really uncomfortable to feel like you're acting really big. Early on when I was doing these videos for the Tribune, I would think I was being really big and emoting or showing something that would just be interesting for the viewer to see. And I would see that what feels big to me as I'm doing it is actually showing up very tiny on the screen. And so I would have to learn, like, to be this big on screen, it has to feel this big to me. But that's a really uncomfortable feeling because I feel like I'm not being myself. The thing you need to be remembering is that you're not being yourself. That's true. You need to not worry about trying to be yourself or whatever. I am right now a tool for my YouTube channel trying to explain how to talk to a camera. I would not necessarily be as big and emotive and expressive as I would be normally, but I think this just helps the video feel more interesting and more engaging. And I also try to bring that to my job, where I am just trying to create a video that is first and foremost a news video that is helping people understand something about their community, but also the video needs to be entertaining to some degree. And my face, my performance, the way I'm reading the stuff, that is part of that entertaining factor. And so it's really helped me to just see myself as a tool for expressing the idea of news. When I'm talking to people about how I do my video work, often the first question they ask is if I use a teleprompter, and the answer is an absolute yes. This is a very simple teleprompter. It works by using your phone as the device that is beaming the words on screen. It works by rings that goes on the front of your camera lens. Spin it on like that, and then pop this on like that, and then it just lives in front of there. And then I attach my camera to this little tripod I have. I have a very own little mobile teleprompter setup. Now this works by using a phone, so I'm gonna pull up a script right now. So this is the app Teleprompter. I do not have a take on whether this teleprompter app is any better or worse than any other one in the App Store. It's just the one I found, so don't ask me if I like it for any reason. It is literally just part of my workflow. That's how I've been doing it for a while. So I load my script onto here and I will set it going, figure out whatever speed it needs to be, and then you can see it'll start going. And so I can really easily just start rolling through my script. And it is as simple as that. You don't need to get anything fancier than that. I highly recommend this though, especially if you're like me and you don't have a great memory. This is so much easier than trying to memorize a script paragraph by paragraph. And this specific teleprompter costs around $50. I believe it also has a phone attachment, so you can stick one on the back. So if you have another phone for the image projection, you could just use 2 iPhones if that is, part of your workflow. This teleprompter app also has a function for filming yourself. I don't like how it looks nearly as much, and so I just choose to use nicer cameras. But you can always use that, and it's, going to be a lot easier for you when you're trying to record your video to have that sort of teleprompter option nearby. That's kind of the end of the technical part of it. People are always asking me about the teleprompter, so I just wanted to get that out of the way as soon as possible. I'll put a link in the description for ones that I think look pretty good. I do have a hard time feeling pretty robotic when I'm performing, and so I've learned a couple of tricks. One of them is that if I'm getting really in my head, I will actually just read the script on my phone and start taking a walk, and I think the process of walking around makes me feel a little bit looser and calmer, and it gets me a little bit out of my head. So if you're really just in your head, it can help to practice your script while you're just doing a walk around the block. Another thing that has been really huge for me is that when I am both writing my script and again, reading it aloud, I tend to be more formal than I need to be. And so a way I found that I can help loosen myself up is I will actually open up my phone into iMessage and I will start texting a friend as if I was going to tell them about this thing that happened on the city council or whatever. And when I'm thinking about talking to that person in person, like, oh man, did you see this thing? That was crazy. Like, it helps me break out of that sort of like super formal news style. I will say I'm not always great at this too. Sometimes I watch a video back and I think like, oh, I was just being too serious in this, but it is a work in progress, and you do learn this stuff just like any other skill. I would just say it's part of the news industry in 2025 in a way that, 25 years ago, we were not expected to do this. But lastly, I will say that this kind of stuff is a skill like anything else. So if you just make one video a week and you start practicing your on-camera skills, you will see that you will be drastically better very quickly. My first video I ever did at the Tribune, I clearly looked terrified. And it took about 6 months of this being my full-time job to finally feel comfortable and like not have shame when I'm filming myself outside or dread the process of pulling out a camera and recording it. That used to be the worst part of my workday every time I would be in front of a camera. And now it's just, a thing that I do. So it does get better, but you do have to push through it. I hope you liked this video. I appreciate you staying to the end. If you have any questions about other things I've done or want any clarification on this video, I'd love a comment or an email. I'm going to be doing more of these. So if you have a topic you want me to hit, I would love that too, but stay tuned for the next one. Thank you.